Hi, it's Dr. Scott. I have a special message from my children's lit class, June 2, 2020. Having had students of mine and former students literally tear gassed, and in one case injured, in what began as peaceful protests over the murder of George Floyd, I want to answer a question that rings in my own head, which is why is it even important to study children's literature when we're in a worldwide pandemic, when people are dying, when our streets are filled with protests, mostly very peaceful protests, I want to emphasize. I don't think the media has made that clear. Why are we reading children's books? Should we not? Should we just stop? And I have a strong answer for that, and my answer is that no one is born a racist. Racism is learned, and anti-racism can also be learned, and I believe that's the core of my own being. And of course, it's always a journey, and I'm still on that journey myself, and always will be, because I'm an American, and I'm a white American. And as a white American, that is a very long journey, and of course, an even harder journey for those who are people of color in this society. But I completely believe that this class is relevant to these times, very relevant. And let me just list out a couple of ways. First of all, the lenses, the critical lenses that we've been learning to use are absolutely essential for your understanding and your survival as a global citizen and as an American citizen in these times. You need to know about post-colonial theory and what it means. You need to know about feminist theory and what it means. You need to know queer theory, right? You need to understand how childhood and books about childhood have been used from the time of Dickens forward to expose the injustices in society, not just to reinforce them. But you also need to understand, beginning with Dickens, that even Dickens embeds a kind of racism, in his case anti-Semitism, into his anti-oppression narrative. It's never so simple. It's not an on-off switch. It is not, in the unfortunate phrase, just black or white. And I hope that that's one of the things that this course teaches you. We will continue as we move forward to encounter texts which deal with this specifically, explicitly. The last unit in the course deals with the battle still now, the work still now, your work, my work, all of our work as parents, as authors, as students, as teachers, to be more radically inclusive in the children's literature that we now, our generation, is responsible for creating and teaching and propagating out there in the world, including what we teach to our own children. So the last video you get from me is about the continued lack of inclusion, and the last assignments you get from me are about heroic efforts by local Bay Area publishers to change that. So from the beginning of the course to the end of the course, at least in my view, this is a course which does, in at least some ways, very powerful ways, address what's needed in these times. And then I want to make two other offers. One is, if you would like to deal with some texts that are within the arc of British children's classics that we have been studying, that very explicitly deal with racism, I'm sorry to say in a very disturbing way, in longer versions of this course, I have included Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I have included Dr. Dolittle, both of which have very explicitly anti-African, anti-people of color stereotypes built into them. Specifically, the Oompa Loompas in Willy Wonka, who you probably experienced as little orange people, were explicitly black people in the original version. So they were small. They were based on pygmy tribal members from Africa who had been exhibited in human zoos in London, in New York City, in Paris for years and years. And that's built into what is otherwise, at least in my view, a wonderful and magical story of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. But just as anti-Semitism was embedded in Oliver Twist, so too these vicious anti-black stereotypes were built into the classic story Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And then Hollywood, I think, made the right decision to remove that, but then they put in, orange people. Does it make it better that that we're now dealing with dwarves, with small people, in other words. And we sort of replace anti-black with anti-ableism or something like that. I don't know. Same with Dr. Dolittle, who Eddie Murphy made the more recent movie version of, famous African-American comedian of the 90s now. I think he's still out there for you all. Certainly in my generation, he was the #1 comedian in America. But the original Dr. Dolittle was not Eddie Murphy. The original Dr. Dolittle contained some horrible, cringy, disgusting anti-black stereotypes. Dr. Dolittle sails to Africa, a kingdom in Africa. They're imprisoned in this kingdom in Africa, he and his animal friends. And the way that they get out is to promise the black king that Dr. Dolittle knows how to make him white. Whoa. So if you would like to do an extra unit, an extra credit, a replacement, anything like that, about either of those texts, I would be delighted to have you do that. And I have those units all set up and ready to go. They just didn't fit into the 11 weeks that we were given for spring quarter this time. Finally, specifically to how disruptive and how upsetting and how traumatizing this has been for all of us, I usually do remove the time limits at the end of the course. I wanted to get you started keeping up with the course, keeping up with the course, keeping up with the course. But I typically, at the end of the course, say, okay, no more time limits. You can go backwards and do old assignments. You can have all the time you want on overdue assignments. And I think because that curfew in the Bay Area was imposed on many Bay Area counties at 8 o'clock Sunday night, when you have stuff due, there's no reason for me to wait. So I'm basically throwing out the time limits on the class right now. Now, I can't throw out the end of the quarter time limit. And I'm always scared. It's one reason I don't do it right away. I'm scared that if I take these time limits off, that you will not get enough push from me, sometimes uncomfortable push from me, to keep going with your schoolwork, because now you have weeks and weeks invested in this course, and I want you to succeed, and you're all writing brilliantly. It's been a great course. So I hope that by removing time limits and removing late penalties, which is what I'm doing as of now, and I'll do it officially via email, that I don't accidentally trick you into not getting the work done at the end of the quarter, because I can't change the end of the quarter date. I can change any other date, but I can't change that one. In any case, I hope that you hear from me that I am concerned for you, that I am concerned for our world, and that the children's literature and the critical lenses that we're learning together absolutely do matter. Black Lives Matter and children's literature absolutely intersect, and it's all of our jobs to make sure that things moving forward in children's literature in the United States, in our own school at Foothill College, in California, are better. We've got to do better. And the burden is on us. The burden is on authority figures like me, on students like you, on parents, on authors, on readers. Thanks for listening to my